Okay, let us begin this Oscoda Township regular board meeting for August 24th, 2020. Roll call, please.
Ms. McGuire.
Here.
Mr. Cummings.
Here.
Mr. Nordine here. Ms. McGuire.
Here.
Mr. Palmer.
Here.
Mr. Gajewski.
Here.
Mr. Weed.
Here. Okay, first on our agenda is the public hearing for truth and taxation.
All right.
I make a motion that we go into public hearing for truth and taxation.
Support.
Motion by Mr. Weed, support by Ms. McGuire.
All right. On the line tonight.
Well, hold on. Roll call.
Sorry.
Mr. Palmer.
Yes.
Mr. Nordine, yes. Mr. Byer.
Yes.
Mr. Cummings.
Yes.
Ms. McGuire.
Yes.
Mr. Gajewski.
Yes.
Mr. Weed.
Yes, motion's passed. Go ahead, Mr. Schaefer.
Sorry, was button in there. So on the agenda for the public hearing, the Township Board on the 10th of August at the regularly scheduled board meeting passed a resolution to schedule this public hearing. And so on the line this evening, we also have Nancy Schwickert, the assessor for Oscoda Township. And in the packet, you will see resolution 2020-18 regarding the millage rate. And you will see a memo from the assessor on the pages 149, 150, and 151 dealing with the taxable value. So Nancy, would you like to give them some high-level information about the need for this hearing?
Okay, yes. Okay, the purpose of this hearing is to fulfill the requirements of MCL 211.24E of the General Property Tax Act. A simplified explanation of this law is that a truth and taxation hearing is required if the current levy of operating millage, excluding additions, produces more tax dollars than last year's actual levy, excluding losses. Without this hearing, the operating millage rate would be reduced from 4.6908 to 4.6514. Many individuals may have read the public notice hearing and may have paid particular attention to the phrases proposed increase of mills or proposed additional millage. The public notice is referring to the difference between the reduced millage rate without a hearing and the authorized millage rate with a hearing. I have reviewed the previous millage rate documents. The proposed millage rate of 4.6908 is the same operating millage rate that the Charter Township of Oscoda has levied for the last 10 years. I would also like to point out that the real estate market crash, which began 12 or 13 years ago, significantly reduced the township's tax base. The 2020 taxable value is still less than the taxable value was in 2009. In other words, the township would still be levying less operating revenue now than it was levied 11 years ago. If the Township Board of Trustees approves the resolution to levy the millage rate of 4.6908, it will result in additional revenue of $11,784. The estimated tax bill on average would increase $1.39. For a $100,000 home with a taxable value of $50,000, the taxes would be increased by $1.97. Are there any questions from the board members?
Okay, just to be clear here, the township is not increasing the millage.
Correct. It is the same millage rate that the township has levied for operating millages for the last 10 years.
Okay, do you have anything else for this, Nancy?
No, I don't, unless there were any questions.
Okay, so does the board have any comments? All right, then I'm going to open it up for public comment related to truth in taxation. Some notes here. If you are watching or listening to the meeting on 2 devices, then please turn off one of them. You can only have sound on for one device or we're going to have really bad feedback. And if you're listening by phone, you can unmute yourself by pressing *6. I'm going to go ahead and unmute everyone. If you are online, then please either do the raise hand thing or let me know if you have a comment. Okay, does anybody have a comment?
Sure, I have a comment.
Who is this?
Mark Miller.
Okay, go ahead.
And for some reason, I can't get the website I can't read the letters to do the Zoom. My question is in follow-up to the presentation we had at the end of July on the economic development. And I'm not really too sure from sitting there at the 7 p.m. meeting what's been accomplished and how much we've spent to date.
Is this regarding truth and taxation?
No.
Okay. Yeah, we're looking for
I can
comments.
barely hear you. Okay.
We're looking for comments just in truth and taxation.
Okay, I apologize.
It's all right. Does anybody else wish to speak about truth and taxation?
This is Art Cruz. I like to ask, did they say that she could lower the rate? Aaron, did you hear me?
Can you ask that again? You seem to cut out.
Nancy mentioned that the rate, I believe, was 4.5 instead of 4.6. Do we have an option to lower the rate for the taxation in the township?
Nancy, you have a comment?
The township has the option to levy whatever millage rate they choose, provided it does not exceed the maximum authorized millage.
Are we at the maximum?
The proposed levy of 4.6908 would be the maximum authorized millage.
And what's the minimum?
There is no minimum other than what is necessary to pay the operating expenses of the township. This is the same millage rate that has been levied for the last 10 years.
But you mentioned a 4.5. Was that the rate that's current?
No,
I mean, is that
current,
what I'm asking? You mentioned 2 rates. One of them was the proposed rate. What was the other one?
The other rate was 4.6514. That is the rate that the millage would be reduced to if the township did not have this hearing. But with this hearing, they're able to levy 4.6908.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Does anybody else have comment? Okay, hearing no further public comment for this, does the board have any further comment? All right, Nancy or Mr. Schaefer, do you have any further comments?
No, I do not.
No, I do not either.
All right, then I make a motion that we come out of the public hearing.
Support.
Motion by Mr. Weed, support by Ms. McGuire. Roll call?
Mr. Gieske.
Yes.
Mr. Palmer.
Yes.
Mr. Nordine, yes. Mr. Byer. Mr. Byer.
I am not seeing him on here now.
Okay, move on. Mr. Cummings.
Yes.
Ms. McGuire.
Yes.
Mr. Weed.
Yes, motion is passed. All right, is there any agenda additions or changes?
I'd like to add the closing of the trust and agency account. It's required for me to get board permission to do so.
Okay, let's put that
Jamie,
another
Jamie,
number
the bank
5.
account?
Yeah, the bank account, I'm sorry.
Okay, is there anything else, or is there a motion for the agenda?
The other, is that under other number 5?
Correct.
I'll make a motion to accept the agenda with these specified change.
Support.
Motion by Mr. Palmer, support by Mr. Cummings. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Are there any opposed? Motion's passed. For the consent agenda, any comments regarding the minutes for August 10th? Is there any comments regarding payment of bills for $103,677.25? Is there a motion for the consent agenda?
So moved. Jim.
Support.
Motion by Mr. Byer, support by Ms. McGuire. Roll call?
Mr. Nordine, yes. Mr. Gieske.
Yes.
Ms. McGuire.
Yes.
Mr. Byer.
Yes.
Mr. Cummings.
Yes.
Mr. Palmer.
Yes.
Mr. Weed.
Yes, motion's passed. Subcommittee reports and project updates, the utility operating report.
All right, so page 17 of your packet starts the utility operator report through July of 2020. What you'll notice in page 21, that gives you the overview of the work order service calls. After the MISTIG, which is 529, you have the turn on service of 337. and the final reads of 122. So those are some of the largest work orders that are being completed. And under the maintenance allowance, you'll see on page 23, we still have $19,213.92 of that maintenance allowance of $20,000, and so we're in good shape with that through July of 2020. That's all I have for that one. For the drinking water state revolving fund, there is a public hearing on the 27th of August. And so I have in your packet an email that is from Rick Freeman kind of going over this, and then he's on the call tonight. Aaron, if you could unmute Mr. Freeman, he can kind of give you an update on the drinking water state revolving fund and what this means for Oscoda Township as far as future funding opportunities.
Good evening, everyone. I'll try to be brief. It is a little confusing to some degree, but so basically, what Mr. Schaefer, I believe, sent out to you in the packet end of last week, the initial documentation back from the evaluation of our application for DWRF on the drinking water side is that the full application for $7,730,000, which we had to show being spread over 5 years, just based on the requirement, the criteria that they requested of us, has been tentatively approved to move forward this current year and then the subsequent years moving forward. And that is based on moving forward with a loan type of agreement on each year, which we will have the ability to review with the township at each opportunity to make sure that the township is okay to move forward. The second piece of information that shows up on page, I think it was page 15. Is that correct, Dave?
Yeah, if you're looking at the PDF, it's page 42 of 174.
Okay.
You will see the rank is number 3 for Oscoda.
So the township is in really good position to move forward with opportunities for funding, and I guess I'll leave it at that for right now. The page immediately following that, the $1,975,000, which has you ranked 26th, is the first year or the first phase of the 5-year plan, and that's how we broke it down. And the way we broke that down in the plan was, for you that if you recall the map of our funding phases, this would be phase A, B, C, and G. A, B, and C are Oscoda, Oak, and Van Etten over there just south of where we just finished up Loud Drive this year. That's an area that has been identified with some failing wells and definitely some issues that we want to address as soon as we can. And area G, or phase G, is the segment over by the schools off from River Road, near the west end of the school campus. So what this means moving forward is that if you recall, at one of the previous meetings that I was discussing the funding, shortly after Mr. Schaefer and I had a discussion with Eric Polkin with Eagle back in the maybe early April, where there was and still is the potential for funding, grant funding through this program for PFAS contamination. The thing that has come up, and the reason it's broken out the way you see it now, is that due to the COVID pandemic and all of that, this first year there will not be any federal PFAS grants that would be funneled through this project. So what they did is, like I said, they've tentatively approved you for the $7,730,000. Approved you moving forward more likely than not for a $1.975 million project in the spring of 2021, with the understanding, and we can have further discussion on this, with the understanding that the township would, if this truly does get finalized the way we see it, and most likely it will, is that the township would be looked upon to enter into a loan agreement for that $1.975 million project. And I think it can be either a 30 or 40-year loan. And then basically with your disadvantaged franchise compliance, which you are receiving benefit on the SRF side, this would show that the township has undertaken some debt of their own and put you in an excellent position to capture the PFAS funding, which will more likely be in place next year, since we'll be hopefully outside of the COVID situation. So it puts you in a good position to move forward. Again, board does not have to make any action on this tonight. This is just kind of an update of kind of how this is trending. And we will obviously work with Mr. Schaefer and you, the board, as further developments and final direction on how this would work would move forward. And we would anticipate that in the final approval of the township's application, probably, since the public hearing is next.
No, it's this Thursday. This Thursday, the 27th.
This Thursday. I'm sorry, this Thursday. We would probably get final disposition of this application and how to proceed probably right after Labor Day. So I would think then maybe I can give an update at my normal engineering report on the September 14th meeting. If we need to meet at a work session, we can do that also. I'll leave that up to, my discussions with Mr. Schaefer. But that is kind of the way moving forward. And if the board recalls, even under, we're applying for our third ECWAG grant. We've talked about other opportunities with USDA, RD, and more recently, because you've been successful on 2 grants, and they don't make it a recommendation or a requirement, but they have said, Troy Shank has mentioned that, at some point, the township, it might be beneficial to you for future grant opportunities to take on a project, I'll say yourselves, and move it along under a loan program or whatever. So one thing to remember, that any future grants that you would receive, you could use those to pay off the loan balance, either on something like this through DWRF or USDA and all that stuff. So again, that's kind of how this one is shaping up. So the way this would work is, like I said, we've got A, B, C, and G for the first year. We are submitting here shortly the ECWAG, I'll say phase 3 application, which what we're being told is only going to be $1 million as far as funding. So we had to kind of scale back that application to just be phase A and Woodland, assuming that the quiet title goes through without a problem, which it appears it's going to. That would be the ECWAG application. And if that gets approved, and what we're being told, we'll have an answer from Troy on that application within 15 days of our submittal. And we're within just a couple of days of making that submittal. Then the DWRF application would shift a little bit to go to B, C, and G, which would be a little less than, that figure would be like around 1.4 million instead of the 1.975. So again, there's a lot of things moving, a lot of things up in the air right now, and I would anticipate within the next week to 2 weeks, we'll have a better understanding of how this could work, and then I can present a little bit better recommendation to the board moving forward. But what we felt tonight would give you at least, hopefully not too confusing, but to at least give you kind of an understanding of how this would move forward. So that's all I have on the DWRF.
All right, the CWSRF, or the Clean Water State Revolving Fund, public hearing was last Thursday. The board members will recall I provided the IUP, or the Intended Use Plan. And again, this would, in rough figures, fund 24%, or just under $1.2 million of a $4.8 million sanitary sewer improvement that would be phased over 3 years. And so that public hearing went through. That funding would be official. And obviously, we're going to be working with Roe to be able to get that rolling and be finalizing the loan associated with that. And again, a different way of awarding grants is a loan forgiveness program where we enter into a loan agreement and 24% of the principal would be forgiven. So as we have more information on that, the board will be seeing related documents associated with that program. Rick, did I miss anything on that one?
No, you are correct. And that principal forgiveness, as you are already been preliminarily notified that you will be receiving on this one, is similar to how they would do it under the DWRF, you know, if we continue to move forward on that based on their program. Loan forgiveness. The other thing that has happened in the past, again, there's no guarantees, but once you have one of these programs, or in your instance, you know, maybe both programs underway, that does give state legislators in the future, and also federal legislators in the future, the vehicle is in place for them to direct funds to a municipality. In this case, Oscoda Township. So if some specialized funding came up, grant related or whatever, with a DWRF and an SRF, CWSRF in place, that does give them the funding vehicle to send more of potential grant and aid dollars to the community. So again, no guarantees. There have been some communities south of you where our headquarters are located that did receive this through federal grants and all that stuff when the lead contamination surfaced, and PFAS is definitely raising, is getting higher and higher on everybody's radar screen. So it is a potential, and you'd be in place for possibly that type of an arrangement. Again, no guarantees, but that is, and like I said, over the next couple of weeks, we will definitely be working as these things continue to develop and all that stuff. One final thing that these projects moving forward right now, based on the funding mechanism, township approval of that, or modification thereof, putting the plans and specifications together, these two, either the ECWAG and or DWRF on the water side, SRF on the sewer side, would be going out to bid probably in the April and May timeframe, which would then, you know, give pretty much the entire construction season next year to construct these. So again, SRF is over a 3-year period, but the DWRF, if it was that phase one, we more than likely could get it constructed during next year's construction season. So.
All right. Thank you very much, Rick. I appreciate it.
No problem.
Next, we have an update from the Economic Improvement Director. Can you make sure Todd is unmuted for me, please?
Go ahead, Mr. Dickerson.
Good evening. See if I can turn my video on here. There we go. Okay. So good evening. I've got the dashboard updates to the board. We've increased our play sleep activities to 34% complete for the overall strategy and 20% for downtown. We'll be able to make another nice gain here in the coming weeks. And as I reported last month, we've got pretty much all of our RRC tasks at least in process. And I know that Ryan's been working very hard on getting the guide to development done. There's a lot of boxes we can check once that's finished. And so as I report, I think we'll be close to 84% completed by the end of September for RRC. Gaining good ground there. Projects still hovering around 15, and they're across the board, as you can see, between some industrial activity, commercial, and some mixed-use projects that we're working on. Working on 3 projects right now that could very well come to fruition, I'm excited to say. So if there aren't any comments or questions regarding the play sleep activities or the dashboard, I'll just move right into the activity summary. You'll see here in a couple of minutes where the EIC is recommending to the board that they use Friedman Associates for the brokerage services, starting with the Artisan Hall. Been very active with Digital 55 of late as we try to button up some of our projects that we have with them, as well as getting ready for the North American Space Summit. There's been a lot of effort that we've had to put in preparing ourselves for that conference and that mission. Once we get that behind us, we can, I think, finalize and put a final push on the economic development microsite. And so we'll put a wrap on that. As you all know, we had the Downtown Summit, 2 sessions, the one at 4 and the one at 7. Overall, I think we had about 50 participants show up for that. And, part of that platform was really getting from talking about theories and things we could do and getting to a place where we're actually doing some projects and supporting the downtown mission. And so the EIC has set a follow-up meeting for October 20th to revisit those thoughts and maybe get it pared down to either start an art fund and actively pursuing projects within that, or would the community prefer a vibrancy grant or other grant programs that maybe we could put together. So on October 20th, I hope that we have maybe even more participants show up for that as we guide that mission forward for 2021. And then we've also decided on a date of October 21st for the Wordsmith Business District Roundtable. I'd like to pull in the businesses out there and just have a chat with them about life through COVID, what it might look like after COVID, and see what the township can do to support those businesses. As I mentioned, the Space Summit's this weekend, and so we've been hard at work getting our materials ready and being able to go promote the community to that. And then under the grant pursuits and opportunities, we've got the Site Ready grant out for RFP for engineering services, which then allows us to pursue EDA grant monies. And then the last thing I've been heavily involved with the last several weeks was the second round of the MEDC relief grant. The recap on that was Iosco County was designated with $815,000 for small businesses. So the committee awarded those monies. about 20% of that money went out to the smaller communities around Oscoda and East Tawas and Tawas. And then Tawas accounted for $411,550. I should say Tawas and East Tawas together, and then Oscoda and Asabo accounted for $248,975. So in all, we had 93 applications. That's kind of how the money got spent, or how the money got awarded. And then last on my list was the Blue Ribbon event, Flights on the Beach, which was this last week on August 15th and 16th. Very, very good turnout. I was there with Danielle periodically, checking in on things, and there was a lot of activity. I would say the patrons appreciated having the opportunity to have a drink while they were there. And I think the vendors did well. So overall, we'll call that one a success, and we're looking forward to the upcoming events that she has in October and November. And that is my update.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Dickerson. That's a lot of good help for our community.
Yeah, I'm excited about the money that the MEDC was able to bring forward, and it's meaningful help for the small businesses who obviously have been very, very impacted by this COVID issue.
All right, the next item is the annual evaluations for the superintendent. I've only received evaluations from 2 board members. So I guess hopefully we can get more in. If the board members can have the remaining board members can have those to me no later than September 9th, so that we can have them for the board meeting on September 14th. Anybody have any questions regarding that?
No. Yeah, Aaron, do we need to get the form out of that was in the packet for one of the previous meetings where we decided on the shorter one? Is that where we get that? I didn't have anything sent to me.
Yeah, or pick one up at the Township Hall.
Okay, all right.
And we're using the new form. That's what the board approved, was the new form, not the old one.
Right.
Okay. Just want to make sure, because I received an old form. Left me a little baffled. All right, and then the budget work session, Mr. Schaefer.
All right, here I am. Okay, so tomorrow is the 2021 budget work session number 4. It is Tuesday, the 25th at 2 p.m. virtual. I have the link and then the call-in information there. So that'll be at 2 p.m. tomorrow. Tammy was able to send out the agenda with the supporting documentation that we will be reviewing tomorrow, and that's been posted as well. That's all I have for that.
Anybody else have any project updates? All right, then on to the superintendent report. Township representative authorization for the ECWAG.
All right, so your packet contains an email from the Township's engineer of record dated the 14th of August, 2020. It is recommended that the superintendent become the authorized township representative for the Emergency Community Water Assistance Grant, or ECWAG. If approved, the minutes of this meeting detailing the action from the Township Board will be forwarded to the USDA Rural Development, and this requires Township Board approval.
Comments?
Just a quick question from Jim. Who is the township representative, authorized township representative now?
Currently, it's Supervisor Weed.
I see. Okay. All right. Okay. Thank you.
Any other comments or a motion?
I'll make a motion that we approve the township superintendent as the authorized township representative for ECWAG.
Support.
Motion by Ms. McGuire, support by Mr. Palmer. Roll call.
Mr. Gieske,
Yes.
Ms. McGuire,
Yes.
Mr. Byer,
Yes.
Mr. Cummings,
Yes.
Mr. Palmer,
Yes.
Mr. Nordine, yes. Mr. Weed.
Yes, motion's passed. DPW recommendations for the sale of vehicles.
All right, so your packet contains a memo dated the 17th August 2020 from the DPW supervisor recommending the sale of both vehicles and equipment. The proposal would be to sell 4 Crown Victoria, former police vehicles that were used by the DPW, and there's various model years. A 2000 GMC truck, a 1985 John Deere 450 e-bulldozer, and a truck topper formerly used by the utilities department. In line with previous practice, pictures would be taken to get these items listed for auction on BidCorp. Once sold, DPW would work with the clerk to remove these items from the township's insurance policy, and this proposal requires township board approval.
Comments?
I just got one on the dozer.
I'm sorry, what was that?
I just got one on the dozer.
Yes, sir.
You made a comment in there that the cylinders are leaking and it costs between $1,200 and $2,500 to get them fixed.
Yes.
But the window, sales window is $12,000 and $15,000.
Correct.
If this is going to be a minimum bid set on that, or are we going to leave that window wide open along with the cylinders to be replaced or repacked? How are we going to bid that?
I'm sorry. So, what is your question again? The
Okay, the
12
window,
to 15.
the window is $12,000 to $15,000 off of their lot if they had it.
Yep.
But then he made a comment that it's going to cost us possibly up to $2,500 to have all the cylinders repacked.
Yep.
Now, if we want to get maximum out of there, would it be beneficial to repack them cylinders and hold a minimum bid of $15,000 on that? Or do you just want to leave the windows wide open and say the cylinders need repacking and get $11,000 for it? I don't know where he wants to go with that.
So I think that is that's part of this is basically, obviously, if we're going to put 2,500 into the bulldozer, we probably want to be able to understand that we can get 15,000 out of it. Without putting money into it, obviously the $12,000 is probably not feasible, and so you might want to put a minimum bid, say, of $10,000 or $11,000 as a minimum. And like you said, state that the cylinders would need to be repacked.
Right. Because if we ask 15 and they know them cylinders got to repack, they're going to come in under 12.
Yep.
I don't care which way you do it, just that we should have a max and a min.
Any other comments?
My opinion on the bulldozer is, don't put any money into it. It's a 35
old, does it even start? And how would you get it to, let's say, Northern Truck for repairs?
Well, they could get it on a bed.
And I have a question, which is going to seem like a dumb one, but truck topper, is a topper like a cap on the back of a pickup truck, or what is a truck topper?
Yeah, so the truck topper is basically a cab on top of the bed, and then there are drawers and there are doors associated where tools can be stored to go to a job site.
Okay, all right. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other comments or a motion?
I move that we approve the proposal from the DPW to list the vehicles and equipment for sale and authorize the clerk and supervisor to execute all related documents.
Support.
Motion by Mr. Byer, support by Mr. Cummings. Roll
Yes.
call.
Ms. McGuire,
Yes.
Mr. Byer,
Yes.
Mr. Cummings,
Yes.
Mr. Palmer,
Yes.
Mr. Nordine, yes. Mr. Gieske,
Yes.
Mr. Weed,
Yes, motion's passed. EIC recommendation for real estate brokerage services.
All right, so your packet contains a proposal for professional real estate services from Friedman Brokerage Company. Pursuant to the advertisement for brokerage services with a deadline of submittals on the 8th of July, 2020, the township received 2 proposals. The EIC has reviewed both proposals and has discussed in multiple meetings and recommends the township board approve the service agreement with Friedman. Professional services agreement is also contained in your packet. The term of the agreement shall be for 2 years and excuse me, will start with listing the Huron Shores Artisan Hall. The township may, at its discretion, add properties to the listing agreement, but is not obligated to list properties for set disposition, and this requires township board approval.
Any comments?
Yeah, Dave, can you explain the last part of that sentence that said not obligated to list properties set for disposition? What do you mean by set for disposition?
Sure. So if we like what they're doing with the Huron Shores Artisan Hall, we could choose to list on E with them. We could choose to list the 8.3 acres on Skeel Avenue across from Alpena Community College. So as we have these other properties at the township's discretion, we could also list those with Friedman.
Thank you.
This is Jim. I think board members know that Friedman is the same company that is listing the former Kmart site. I believe it's the same.
That's correct.
Okay.
we've sold quite a few properties, at least, you know, in our collective, my term on the board, last 4 years, our collective term here. I've lost kind of track how many, I guess my question is, how many low value pieces do we have that we might add? Because we, in my mind, need to be a little cautious with that $5,000 minimum. And I understand the concept there, that they need to be guaranteed that they're going to get money out. But if we have any low value properties left, we would, I think, want to look a different direction than listing them with this. And that may be the intent all along. I just wanted to speak to that. With that $5,000 minimum, listing low value properties with them might be, you know, counter advantageous.
Sure. And I think as Todd has gone through many of these, and Aaron, if you could unmute Todd, many of what you would consider to be the low value properties, we're trying to be able to combine into the opportunity. So, for example, I don't know the specific number of parcels that make up that 8.3 acres on Skeel Avenue across from ACC. But basically, you know, our intent is to be able to combine those into the entirety of an opportunity. And Todd, I think you're unmuted now.
Yeah. So, John, there's probably maybe a handful of just smaller, oddball properties that the township owns. And I wouldn't recommend that we list really any of those properties with probably any third-party broker. I just don't, you know, they've either got some environmental issues with them, or, you know, one is a residential lot up in, Lakewood Shores area that's, you know, just an oddball property. So we'd have to come up with a different strategy for, you know, selling those. I wouldn't suggest we put them with any third party. I just don't think they would be successful, and I don't think that's how you'd end up selling them anyway.
Great. That's good to hear. That's exactly what I wanted to hear. We'd take a different approach. I'm glad you guys have thought that out way ahead of me. So that's good. I'm glad.
Yeah, and I think that's the important part of the proposed agreement or relationship with Freeman. You know, the board, the township isn't obligated. You know, we don't have to turn all of our properties over to them, and we did that by design. We want to be able to hand select the ones that make sense for someone like this to represent us.
Any other comments? Is there a motion?
I move that we approve the professional services agreement between the township and Friedman for real estate brokerage services, as well as authorize the clerk and supervisor to execute all the related documents.
Support.
Motion by Mr. Cummings, support by Mr. Palmer. Roll call.
Mr. Nordine, yes. Mr. Byer.
Yes.
Mr. Cummings.
Yes.
Ms. McGuire.
Yes.
Mr. Gajewski.
Yes.
Mr. Palmer.
Yes.
Mr. Weed.
Yes, motion's passed. EIC recommendation for revision of the tax abatement policy.
All right, so your packet contains a request for proposal to advertise for services for a consultant to evaluate our current tax abatement policy within the Wordsmith Business District. Additionally, the consultant will evaluate the opportunity, institute, and draft a tax abatement policy within the State Street Business and Neighborhood District. The current policy for the Wordsmith Business District is from 2011, nearly 10 years old, and also included within your packet. The tax abatement policy relative to the State Street Business and Neighborhood District should be considered to recruit new businesses to the downtown area. The Economic Improvement Committee supports and recommends this action to the Township Board, and this requires Township Board approval.
Comments? Is there a motion?
Yeah, I move that we approve the Economic Improvement Director to advertise for tax abatement policy consulting services.
Support.
Motion by Mr. Byer, support by Mr. Palmer. Roll call.
Mr. Cummings.
Yes.
Ms. McGuire.
Yes.
Mr. Gajewski.
Yes.
Mr. Palmer.
Yes.
Mr. Nordine, no. Mr. Byer.
Yes.
Mr. Weed.
Yes, motion's passed. Professional services contract agreement with IT Right.
All right, so we have Mr. Randy Allen on the line tonight as well, in case the board has any questions, but your packet contains an email from IT Right, a service bundle proposal dated the 10th of August, 2020, and a proposed professional services contract agreement. The proposed professional services contract agreement is a 2-year agreement commencing the 1st of January, 2021 through the 31st of December, 2022, worth $42,999.84. The current pricing model stays in effect through the 31st of December, 2020. As stated in the IT Right Service Bundle proposal, this is an annual increase of $15,464.92. IT Right is proposing a cost structure based on 36 seats or endpoints, going from $14 per month per seat up to $43 per month per seat. As explained by IT Right, the industry standard is $100 per month per seat, and the proposed professional services contract agreement requires Township Board approval.
Any comments?
Yeah, your comment, annual increase of $15,464.92. We're covering 2 years here. Does that mean 2 of those increases of 15,000 plus, or does the 15,000 plus cover the 2-year period?
So the annual increase would be $15,464.92 per year.
So for 2 years, it's going to jump up 15 full.
We're going to pay the same amount per month, but the annual increase from the current rate each year goes up $1,464.92.
So that's an increase of about $31,000 over the 2-year period.
That is correct.
Okay. And the seat or endpoint goes from 14 per month that we're paying now, and it triples to 43 per month.
That is correct.
Okay.
Actually, the seat costs are going up to $50 a seat. Our costs, IT Right's costs for, keep our cars on the road, lights, keep the help desk running, all that, averages out to $43 per seat. So at $43 per seat, technically speaking, we're break even on our tools and services that we use, like the ransomware prevention, backup, and all of that. So anything above $43 per seat is the marginal amount of profit made. So it's actually $50 a seat per seat.
Any other cut? Go ahead.
Dave, is there any reason why we didn't bid this service out?
So we could go, the board could have the option to be able to do an RFP. However, I have corroborated with other professionals, other city managers, and basically this is a professional service. We have been a client of IT Right for quite a while, and they do our network administration. So basically the board has the option to move forward with this pricing structure. If I was directed to put an RFP together and pursue that, we could have the potential to come back with others that are, we would have to basically have another company provide IT network administration, whereas IT Right is familiar with our network and does network administration, has done our network administration for quite some time now.
What other
in the concept, this is Jim. Jamie, go ahead, you first.
What other benefit does the township get from going from $14 a seat to 43 besides what Randy explained for them to break even? What is the township getting anything out of that increase?
I can speak to that if it's okay with you, Dave.
Sure.
So we've implemented a number of different programs. I came up and spoke with Dave last fall winter, talking about the various things that we've added to the table. One of the most significant ones, and I'll try not to take up too much time here, but there's quite a few tools that we've brought to bear, but one of the most significant ones is Sentinel-1, which is our anti-virus and anti-ransomware technology that has the ability to roll back an active ransomware attack. We invested about $100,000 in this software. We've invested a little more than $100,000 into our BombGuard software so that we can be FIPS compliant, which is a level of compliancy required by the FBI when remoting into law enforcement machines, such as police, sheriff's departments, 911 centers, and so forth. And we're also currently beefing up our data center here in our backup program and moving everything over to Veeam so that we can start taking virtual image snapshots of servers so that we can recover them quicker, put them up in the cloud in the event that we have an area disaster, things like that. So we're taking a variety of steps, each of which has an investment cost to it in order to provide a better, more positive service for the township. But one of the key things that we're doing is historically we've had kind of a reactive relationship with the township. Now we're taking a proactive relationship in addition to the help desk services, field services, backup, antivirus, all the other things that we're talking about, plus the proactive monitoring. We've assigned a technology alignment manager, which is Caleb Eifert, to the township. His job is to align the township's technology with industry standard best practices as laid out by, like the Center for Internet Security, for example, just kind of the gold standard for security. And so he goes and he takes deep dives into various aspects of the network, provides a thorough report to a VCIO, which is a virtual chief information officer that's provided for the township. And Tom Conway is your VCIO. And Tom Conway then meets with Dave on a quarterly basis, gives him a report and update on the steps that we're taking to improve the township technology. So we're holding our feet to the flames, so to speak, with objective bullets that he's able to monitor and make sure that we're moving the ball down the field, so to speak. So we've got that a far more proactive relationship now than before. So we're spending more time with the township as well.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Randy, question?
Yes, sir.
In the professional contract that we have to look at, you have a list of 9 things that are covered. Then on the same page below, services not covered. And you have some examples, but then you talk about that you reserve the right to charge an hourly rate for labor. Can you tell us what our hourly rate is?
Our hourly rate is $150 an hour. There's a few caveats to that, though, for service contract clients that I've always put in place. The first one is we've never done cost overruns in the history of the company, nor do we intend to in the future. So when we do have, for instance, a server project where we have, we consider a server project as generally for 90% of our clients, 99% of our clients, that's the only thing they'll ever see a fixed rate for. But rather than give a variable rate, I'll quote out a fixed rate, which is typically 12 hours at $150 an hour, or another way to look at that is a day and a half, 8 hours first day, 4 hours the second day for follow-up is a typical server project. But service contract customers also get a 20% discount, just, a loyalty discount that we get off the top of that. So a typical server install ends up being about $1,440 in labor. And if there's any time overruns, if we spend more time there because we ran into trouble or anything like that, that's on us, not the township. So, we eat any remainder there. The only thing outside of server installs that you could see be billable is if you need cabling work done, someone to climb a tower or mount wide area access points, up on poles and that sort of thing. We subcontract that with various cabling companies. There's experts in the field that have ladder trucks and all that stuff. And then really that's it. Those are the two things that my clients tend to find that they might have a fixed price for, is server replacements, which generally only takes place every 5 or 6 years. And then if they have some cabling that they get done.
All right, I have one more question. I have one more question on that, and then I'll shut up here. I will, technical guy on the board, so, but I have a question. You're talking $150 an hour, but you're talking about a loyalty discount of 20%, so forth. I think I understand that, but according to this contract, is the township, if we wanted to get into a server installation or major network expansion project, are we allowed to go outside of ITT contract? Get some
for hardware, absolutely. You know, I have clients, for instance, that Cascade Township is a great example out near Grand Rapids. They buy all their stuff through Dell. They have a relationship with a Dell government representative, and they've been my client about as long as you guys have been. So you know, since you guys have been with us since 2009, so they've been around just about as long. And you know, the only thing I've ever really asked for is, you know, hey, if you're going to buy hardware elsewhere, you know, please let us take a look at the specs to make sure that it's going to meet the requirements for the project. You know, because BSNA and various other software vendors have specific requirements. Beyond that, you know, you really can't have a situation where you've got two IT companies doing labor in your network. It's too many hands in the cookie jar. You know, if something goes wrong and, you know, you've had two different entities working on your server, we're going to be left with a bad situation where one company is looking at the other company and, you know, there's not records, there's not a clear record of what's been done. So I don't recommend having two different entities doing the labor, but the hardware, absolutely. You can get hardware anywhere you want. By no means are you required to order hardware through ITRAC. And if, you know, if it will help the board feel a little bit more better about things, because ITRAC doesn't have a history of being hard sales, and nor do I wish to be now. I realize that this is a significant change. I would be happy to alter the contract and say the next server replacement's covered as well, you know, just as a good faith offer.
All right, Mr. Allen, my name is Tim. Yeah, so I want to point out that the hourly rate missing from the contract, being that you're providing three different articles here. You're providing a contract, you're providing a letter, and you're providing a proposal. But it doesn't actually give us as much as one might think, having three different sources of information. There isn't an hourly rate that tells us anything about what we can expect from you. I'm also going to share a little bit here publicly that I'm aware of the conversation that you had with the township roughly a year ago. I wasn't at that meeting, but I know that Tammy and Dave were. And it was only after the fact that I was disappointed that I wasn't there to meet you, because when you say that, you know, you aren't being hard sell, or what was the word you used earlier, that you weren't basically trying to press this change in pricing in a negative way. The fact of the matter is I got a very different story from Tammy and Dave then. You know, I can appreciate that you feel that there's a correction needed. That's fine. You can cite industry standards. However, industry is quite broad, and you know, we are not looking for services that rank with the Pentagon. So my answer here to this contract and the way this has been set up is that I will not be voting in favor of this contract. I'm more inclined to go out and see if we can get something cheaper. I think that there were not positive business practices exercised prior to this call that makes you sound much more genuine than you really are. I think this is a very bad reflection on your company.
I'm sorry to hear this, sir. Would like to be able to do something to change your opinion, but I certainly respect it.
One of the things which I remember being mentioned to me actually is that you had told Dave and Tammy that if we were not being allowed, or you did not want us to go out and look for a competitive bid.
That's all true.
And I find that to be rather, well, you have no reason to make it up. I'm sorry. But, you know, you sat there in front of two people who are not technical. And I think that the conversation that I was aware of was quite a bit of a railroading. And I'm not in favor of a $15,000 annual uptick. Thank you very much for your time.
My only response to that is it was early in the process. I was fine-tuning my message. I certainly was not trying to be hard sales, nor am I now. I've reached out to Mr. Schaefer several times saying that I would work with him in any way possible and that we were super flexible in terms of how we do this with the township. And we still are very flexible in how we do this. To illustrate said flexibility, we've implemented many of the services that I spoke of today, as a matter of fact, all of them, without expecting any additional fees here in 2020, just as a means of a mea culpa for how Mr. Schaefer felt from the first meeting. So I tried to make amends there. If I didn't know that I had rubbed him the wrong way, and I certainly tried to repair that. And then the other thing is I've got emails that I've sent that said, you know, if you decide you want to go out to bid, here's a boilerplate RFP example that you can use. And I think I may have even sent some bid examples because I've got 3 or 4 bid examples over the past year of townships and cities that went out to bid, such as City of Cadillac, Brighton Township, and Bloomfield Hills City, which I'm also happy to share. So the last thing I want to do is make anyone feel angry. I've done 60 or 70 of these conversations, several of which have led to board meetings. This is the only time I've been told that someone felt that way. So obviously I feel terrible about it. And I want to do what I can that's best for the township. I would fully understand if you went ahead and was trying to be supportive of that along the way. The one thing where I think I made a mistake, and this is on me entirely, was because your contract is unique that you pay monthly. Most people pay annually. And so when I spoke with Mr. Schaefer, you know, to give him time to think, I said, well, let's try to get a decision, you know, by X month. And that didn't happen. And I think when I came back seeking a decision, he probably felt some pressure from me. It wasn't my intention, but it happened. That's on me. And one of the ways to make up for that was I told Mr. Schaefer, look, you know, we're going to carry out 2020 to the end. We're going to give you the additional services. We're not going to expect a penny for it, and we'll just worry about the dollars and cents down the road. And that's the truth.
Any other comments? Is there a motion?
Can I ask Mr. Schaefer, do you have a recommendation or a preference as to the board's decision here?
Well, obviously, I've had a lot of questions here tonight. I do have the RFP example from the City of Cadillac. They did go out to RFP. IT Right came in the lowest. They eventually went with IT Right. We could go through that exercise if the board, if that's the way they want to go. Obviously, I spoke to the city manager at Cadillac, corroborated that. That's why I'm giving you this story tonight. If you want me to do the RFP and everything like that, I will certainly do that if that's what the board wishes me to do. Obviously, this is a professional services contract agreement. The board does have more flexibility, and that's why it's in front of you tonight. If you'd like me to pursue the RFP, obviously I can go that way.
Yeah, Dave, this is Bill. I'd just like to say that I don't think it's unreasonable for a company to increase their fees for services they've provided. We've used IT Right, I believe, for about 11 years, and just some of the things that they're giving us, if nothing else, the antivirus and ransomware protection based on, horror stories heard about ransomware hitting different companies and computer systems. That's become a big issue. So we've had good luck with IT Right. I think they've done a good job for us over the years. I'm not a computer professional by any stretch of the imagination, but I think when you have a company that does a good job for you, I don't see a reason to change. They're increasing their prices, and like Mr. Allen said, they've had to make investments in their company of hundreds of thousands of dollars for some of these things to be able to use. They have to recoup those costs. I'm comfortable with keeping the relationship with IT Right. So with that, I would make a motion to approve the professional service agreement between the township and IT Right for IT services, and authorize the clerk and supervisor to execute all related documents.
Support. Motion by Mr. Palmer, support by Mr. Weed. Roll call.
Mr. Byer,
No.
Mr. Cummings,
No.
Ms. McGuire,
No.
Mr. Gajewski,
No.
Mr. Palmer,
Yes.
Mr. Nordine, yes, Mr. Weed.
Yes. Motion has failed. So how does the board want to proceed from this point?
I recommend RFP. I would also like to add that the concern that I voiced earlier was not about the quality of technical support service which we have received. In fact, I would go and have gone and provided glowing acknowledgments to Caleb, who is the guy who has primarily provided us on-site support. He's been phenomenal. My issue here is really with the contract, and I really have strong issue with this, and I don't think that this is the way business should be done. So if IT Right should happen to apply and want to win our business back, I think a more amicable and less predatorial approach would be warranted. That's exactly how I feel about it. I think you failed us quite seriously, Mr. Allen, and I really don't think you're taking full responsibility for all that took place in the conversations at the beginning. And I'm sorry, I'm not a fan of yours right now.
Understand. I look forward to the opportunity to try to change that opinion.
And Randy, I was one of the first speakers, and I am really the low tech guy of the seven of us, bar none. But I am just floored by, in a 2-year contract, that you want $31,000 more than than the initial price that I guess we're paying now. That seems like a lot of money over 2 years.
It is.
Bump up. Yeah.
We
So
should
a lot of money.
raise our prices gradually over time, and I don't disagree with that at all. These negotiations that I've been having throughout the state have been difficult. Many of them have been doubling, tripling, even quadrupling the price because I'm getting everyone on the same page at $50 a seat. And the longer or the older the client is, the longer they were grandfathered in, the bigger the change. And so it hasn't been an easy process, to say the least, but we are trying to bring more professional services to bear. And as stated earlier, there's just costs to cover. Anything below $43 a seat, and we're losing money, and we have been for some time. And we're trying to right the ship. If I could go back and make any of this better, I would. Like I said, I've never had a situation like this in my entire client base, so it's no fun to have a black mark on your record, but I'm going to do what I can to try to rectify it.
Okay, is there a different motion?
Okay, so if I can butt in here, I guess typically what would happen is our next board meeting is the 14th of September, and I could come back with an RFP prepared as far as and authorize the board to be able to review and advertise for that RFP on the 14th of September. And Randy, if you could send me, I have the one from Cadillac. I don't have the RFP from Brighton. And then there was another one from a Falls.
Is there any comments from the board members regarding that process?
it sounds good to me. And IT Right, I'm hoping, will enter this request for information and proposals. I don't have a bad feeling about Randy. I'm just shocked by $31,000 over 2 years, a raise, a difference in what we're now paying. That is a real hike. So, but I'm not privy to the conversation you had during the winter with Dave, and I believe there were three of you. I'm not privy to that, second hand or third hand. I'm just looking at the numbers, and $31,000 is a scary number to me.
I understand.
Okay, hearing nothing else, I guess we'll move on. Thank you, Mr. Allen, for your time.
Thank you, sir. You guys have a nice night.
For resolution and ordinances, resolution 2020-18 for the millage rate.
All right, so this is the culmination of the resolution from last board meeting on the 10th of August, and then our public hearing, and then the reference that the assessor made to the general property tax law, section 211.24E. And this is to levy the additional millage rate of 0.0394 mils, which would restore the maximum allowable millage for the general operating fund and of 4.6908 mils for 2020 for the general operating fund.
Any comments? Is there a motion?
Yeah, I make a motion that we adopt resolution 2020-18 regarding millage rate.
Support.
Motion by Mr. Byers, support by Ms. McGuire. Roll call.
Mr. Palmer,
Yes.
Mr. Gajewski,
Yes.
Ms. McGuire,
Yes.
Mr. Cummings,
Yes.
Mr. Nordine, yes. Mr. Byer?
Yes.
Mr. Weed?
Yes, motion's passed. Under other, update for the bylaws of the Zoning Board of Appeals.
All right, so what you have in your packet, you have an email from the 19th of August, 2020, from the zoning administrator associated with the ZBA bylaws. Within there, he has the bylaws with the yellow highlights denoting the changes. So I'm sorry, with the strike-throughs denoting the changes. So the text that is struck through is what is changing, and what you'll see on there, it is page 155 of your packet under G. There's strike-through language within there.
Any comments? Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion that we update the bylaws for the Zoning Board of Appeals.
Support. Jim.
Motion by Ms. McGuire, support by Mr. Byer. Roll call.
Mr. Byer?
Yes.
Mr. Palmer?
Yes.
Mr. Gajewski?
Yes.
Ms. McGuire?
Yes.
Mr. Cummings?
Yes.
Mr. Nordine, yes. Mr. Weed?
Yes, motion's passed. Request appropriations increase for the general fund.
All right, so what you have in your packet is page 158 of the packet, and you'll see an email from the clerk on Tuesday, the 18th of August, 2020. And what is being requested is an increase in the general fund appropriations. And this is for the cost center for 262 or elections. And what he has detailed is the $10,738 for the 3 line items associated for the requested increase from $26,040 up to $36,778. And he provides the text in there as far as basically COVID-19. The pandemic has resulted in PPE, cleaning supplies, as well as postage, seeing a very large uptick in ballots and mailings for the ballots. So what requests, the increase in 2020 appropriations from the general fund 101, it would go up as a total of the request of $3,242,218 up to $3,252,956. John, did I miss anything on this request, sir?
I don't think so. I don't think I would have said anything else unless anyone has any questions.
Yeah, John, did I, it seems to me I read somewhere recently that there were some monies available for like, because of the COVID-19 through the CARES Act or some other government act.
Yes, you cut out a little bit. Election, I don't know if you said supplies or not, but yes, the state specifically is who I interact with, but it's my understanding it's come from the federal government through the CARES Act, and they've been helpful in offsetting some costs, and in some instances they just send us some materials that they think will be helpful. For the August election, some of it came in like a couple days before, some of it came in even a few days after, some of it I haven't received. So I still bought some, especially personal protection equipment, because I was just getting a little jumpy, then nervous that it wouldn't come in, and I figured I could use whatever's left over for November. So, but to answer your question, yes, the state and then the federal government ultimately also has provided some assistance.
Okay, so this is what's what's come from the state.
I'm sorry, this
Oh,
is
you're
what?
cutting out. I can't hear him.
So this is over and
Yes, I think I understand. Over and above what has come from the state. Yeah, this is trying my best to factor in what we've received from the state. Kind of factoring in, hoping we'll get some in November, but also not wanting to have to come back to you guys, to the board. So yes, this is factoring in the state's assistance.
okay. And this will be adequate to cover the November election, you think?
That's my hope. Yeah, I definitely don't want to have to come back again. So yeah, that's my hope. Hopefully I underspend this and don't need it all.
Okay. All right. Very good. Thank you.
Question, John, from Jim. Michigan state law on mail-in voting or absentee, whatever you want to call them, they're basically, but you cannot open these and start counting them until the polls are closed. Is that correct?
No, I cannot start opening them and start counting them. And when I mean the election workers, we cannot start opening and counting them until the polls open on election day.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So you can be counting them throughout the day.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep. And we've set up a process with the Absent Voter Counting Board to try and facilitate, make that more of a possibility. Because before it was an option, but practically speaking, we didn't really get a chance to until the end of the night, till polls closed. There's no rule. It's just practicality. It's just what happened with the people coming in person. To set up a different system to try to be able to do it as soon as the polls open, we're able to process them.
Okay. All right. Do you do that in a separate room or something like that, or?
Yes. Yep. The Absent Voter Counting Board has to be sequestered, and we did that in August for the first time, and they're able to go to the bathroom, but that's about it.
Okay.
Previously,
So
it was not a separate. It was not separate. Each of the 4 precincts processed absentee ballots during the day as time allowed. This year is the first year that we were able to set up a separate precinct just for absentee ballots.
All right.
Absolutely.
John, did that new terminal help you cut the time frame down? I know you didn't have that many people voting the primary, but with that new terminal, it cut the amount of time down?
Yeah, absolutely. And we had 1,300 people vote absentee, so that's a huge increase as to the previous August primaries. And yes, while the absentee people were there a little later than I would hope, because it was the first time and there was a significant increase, the people who work the precincts, who deal with the people walking in every day, the 4 precincts, they were out by 10:30, which is I was well pleased with. So yeah, it was a great benefit, I thought.
Good.
Any other comments or a motion?
Well, I certainly think this is money well spent to have a good election and keep people from jamming together in the hallways of the township hall waiting their turn during this COVID crisis. So whatever we can do to alleviate that, I'm for it. So I make a motion that we do increase the election budget by $10,738.
Support.
Motion by Mr. Byer, support by Ms. McGuire. Roll call.
Ms. McGuire.
Yes.
Mr. Gajewski.
Yes.
Mr. Palmer.
Yes.
Mr. Nordine, yes. Mr. Byer.
Yes.
Mr. Cummings.
Yes.
Mr. Weed.
Yes, motion's passed. Recommendation to hire part-time public safety clerical assistant.
All right, so what you have in your packet is an email from the police chief from last Thursday, the 20th of August. And this is the recommendation to hire Nicole Tregear as the part-time public safety clerical position. If approved, she would start tomorrow. The position works 24 hours per week. I corroborated with the clerk that the hourly rate for this starting position would be $12.62 per hour.
Any comments? Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve Nicole for the part-time clerical position, of the police department.
Support.
Motion by Mr. Palmer, support by Ms. McGuire. Roll call.
Mr. Palmer,
Yes.
Mr. Nordine, yes. Mr. Gieske,
Yes.
Ms. McGuire,
Yes.
Mr. Byer,
Yes.
Mr. Cummings,
Yes.
Mr. Weed.
Yes, motion's passed. Guide to development.
All right, so the board doesn't have the guide to development. That was a placeholder item. In case we were able to get that to you for review, you'll see that on the meeting for the 14th of September. What that is, that's the RRC, so MEDC's Redevelopment Ready Community Certification. It is a guide that walks potential investors within the community through our zoning processes. And so it's kind of a boiled down version with flow charts and steps to be able to walk a potential investor through those processes. So you'll be able to see that, and that's a culmination of work with the Planning Commission and the EIC and the Economic Improvement Director and the fellow and myself, as well as the zoning administrator. So it's been a collaborative process, and you'll be able to see that next meeting.
Okay, trust and agency.
As the board's aware, previously we voted to close several accounts, trust and agency being one of them. Tonight, I would like to get the board's approval to close the actual bank account before we incur any unnecessary fees.
Any questions or comments? Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion that we close the trust and agency bank account.
Support.
Motion by Mr. Palmer, support by Mr. Byer. Roll call.
Mr. Cummings,
Yes.
Mr. Palmer,
Yes.
Mr. Nordine, yes. Mr. Gieske,
Yes.
Ms. McGuire,
Yes.
Mr. Byer,
Yes.
Mr. Weed.
Yes, motion's passed. All right, we're now into our public comment period. Just a reminder, if you are watching or listening to the meeting on two devices, then please turn off the volume on one of them. Make sure you only have one sound on for the device, or we're going to have bad feedback. If you are listening by phone and you wish to make a comment, you can unmute yourself by pressing *6. For those of you who are online, please raise your hand. There's a raise hand option next to your name. Do the raise hand option, and I'll know that you'll want to make a public comment. There is a 4-minute time limit, and please introduce yourself when you speak. I'm going to go ahead and make sure that all phone number people are unmuted. So does anybody have public comment? Okay, I have one here, Mary Ed.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Let's talk about character assassination. Jamie goes to the paper, accuses a trustee in the paper without checking with the trustee first, and the paper doesn't check it either, saying the trustee submitted an invoice with the wrong account number and there was no money in the account anyway to pay the invoice. Yet, the invoice was paid the next day after being brought back to the attention of Treasury with the provided account number. Months later, Jamie goes to the paper and uses this invoice as an example of how she has a hard time doing her job, but it wasn't a very good example. When Trustee Cummings gave the real information about the invoice and the account number in board comments at the next board meeting, Jamie's reaction was, "Why didn't you come to me?" Well, why didn't she go to him in the first place before the article in the paper? Because she is working very hard to get this trustee and others voted off through character assassination. He fell into her trap when he called her sweetheart. And you all fall for it too, hook, line, and sinker. I'm asking you to back up and take a second look. According to Trustee Cummings, he has worked 200 plus extra unpaid hours to put the new phone system into Township Hall and develop the Wi-Fi pay-as-you-go opportunity at Old Orchard Park to get Wi-Fi infrastructure in place for this high profit center for the township. After all these contributions to the township, to be blindsided in the paper would be frustrating for anyone. Did he snap back at her when she whined? Yes. Was that a fatal fault? No, it shouldn't have been. Yes, there was lots of noise on Facebook, yet there was lots of noise on Facebook and in the paper about it. Jamie then wrote a letter of discrimination complaint to the superintendent and, of course, gave a copy to the Oscoda Press. What's the definition of discrimination in this case? Acting against a person based on their sex rather than on individual merit. Jamie, you earned that rebuke based on your own behavior. It was not a slight against your sex, but against your handling of the township's finances and against your trying to throw this particular trustee under the bus. And that is not discrimination. You might try actually doing your job instead of trying to duck out of it or blame everybody else for why it's not happening. It's not the superintendent's job to do your job and his. It is not the supervisor's job to do your job and his. It is the trustee's job to side check what is going on, as shown by the discussion on the overcharge for the liquid calcium chloride. Yet Trustee Palmer was rebuffed by you as the treasurer. This is not working together, Jamie. Be the change that you say you want to see. In regards to the full investigation requested in Jamie's discrimination complaint, I asked the board to call for a full qualified audit, every transaction of the township's finances for the last 5 years. Let's put this to rest once and for all. Is Jamie doing a good job or not? The full audit will determine that, not the court of public opinion. I suggest that an accounting firm from downstate be used for this, and I would love to see this done by the end of September so that we know where and with whom we really stand going into the election in November. Thank you.
All right, now I have Trish and Bruce.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Mr. Weed was kind enough to with Melinda to get me the curb stop ordinance that came up, and Mr. Weed talked to me on Friday. I have a couple questions and then a comment. What are the revenues from this tax being used for?
This is your time to plead your case. We don't respond to questions during.
Oh, when will I get it answered?
Go ahead and finish so that you have more time to speak.
Okay. Okay, I'm sorry. Okay. This particular curb stop user fee is in violation of the Headley Amendment of the 9th article of the Michigan State Constitution. It runs completely afoul of it. It's a tax. It's not a user fee. And one of the things that that the Headley Commission and the amendment was for was that many townships and cities in Michigan were and still are charging taxes, and they're misrepresenting them as user fees. We get nothing out of this. I live in Lakewood Shores. There's never been any taxes or anything for the water over 50 years ago. And the court in both the city of Lansing decided in 1998 that there were 3 criteria that were being used to determine whether it's a user fee or not. One of them is a true user fee must be proportionate to the necessary cost of the service. We're not using anything for it. It's been there for over 50 years. And it is disproportionate when the average family is around $40 to $50 a month, and we're being charged $12.33 for nothing. And it's also has to do with the fact that it can't be used to raise general revenue. Just because it is said to be a user fee does not truly constitute a user fee. And if it's an investment in infrastructure and it's not being used to defray the cost of this service being provided to Lakewood Shores or to others, then it runs afoul of Headley and runs afoul of the decision by the Supreme Court of Michigan in Bolt v. City of Lansing. I would like to know whether or not what this fee is being used for and how many people it affects. I haven't been able to get any information regarding that. And I would suggest that you all take a further look at this. Just because you passed this in 2019 does not mean that it passes the Headley portion of the ninth part of the Constitution of Michigan. So it is null and void. It should be null and void, and I suggest you all take a stern look at this to make sure that it doesn't run afoul and why Lakewood Shores is suddenly, out of the blue, being charged for something that never was charged.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Ma'am, could I ask for your last name for the minutes?
Yes, my last name is Reed, R-E-I-D.
Thank you very much.
First name is Patricia.
Oh, thank you.
Okay.
All right, so the next is Art Cruz. Don't have a mute or unmute for you, Mr. Cruz. Unless you're using a phone number or something. You have both a device and a phone number, I can't tell. All right, anybody on a phone number who wishes to make a public comment, please use *6 to unmute yourself and let me know if you have anything. Okay, Mr. Cruz, I see you on the comments there. You said you're on a phone. You're going to have to unmute it through your phone, pressing *6 or whatever the option is for that in order for your voice to come through. I have you unmuted, Mr. Cruz. It's got to be. I keep clicking the unmute button. It's got to be done on your end. The same thing Mr. Byer had to do. Although you can type your comments in the chat box too if you want. I see your message saying you cannot unmute. I don't know if you want to disconnect and reconnect, maybe then it'll work. Let me know if you're going to try that. Okay, he's reconnecting. Okay, Mr. Cruz, are you there? Okay, you were unmuted and now it got muted. But I don't know if you did a mute option on the phone or what. All right, I have public comment from what it says Steven's iPad. Okay, go ahead.
Good evening, Aaron. It's Steve Westerbarth, and I've got a question. Well, I guess more comments along with Ms. Reed's. I have to agree. I'm having a trouble understanding the change, and I guess I missed that coming through a new ordinance in 2019 with ready to serve. In my mind, ready to serve means someone who's paid a tap fee and has a meter. If you have a curb stop, the water's not ready. And we haven't charged since the inception of Lakewood Shores or any other vacant land with curb stops. So I really want to understand the board's decision to change. It appears that the language around ready to serve has changed purely to drive a new stream of revenue without fully explaining it to the taxpayer. So it's definitely a question I have in my mind. I don't think it's right at this point in time, and I'd really like to understand the board's thought process. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Okay, Mr. Cruz, I see you're there, unmuted. And you just went back to muted for some reason. Okay, well, Mr. Cruz, you can always send in a comment via email or through phone message to the township. Seeing no other public comments in the chat or any other hands raised, we'll now move on to board comment. Does anybody have anything?
Yeah, I got one for Mr. Byer.
Yes.
Tim, you there?
I am.
Okay, a couple meetings ago, I talked to you about getting a hold of Mr. Boland about the sanitary or the storm sewer drains here in Hall Island.
Yes.
Let me give you a little update. You made a comment to me in the next meeting that you had contacted Mr. Bowl and someone would be out to investigate the situation. Well, this so happens, nobody has showed up yet. But last week when we had that downpour, it was backed up from the storm source, 4 houses deep, 2 east and 2 west, up to the sidewalks in their driveway, up over the curbs by 3 feet. The next day I happened to be coming in the island, and here's they had the sweeper truck up here, the vacuum truck sweeping the curbs. So I kind of stopped the gentleman and talked to him. He come back and he looked at the problem. He goes, oh yeah. He says, there's only 3 inches of water level there. The rest of it's full. It's got to be vacuumed out. And I said, well, can you take that back and see when they're going to do it? Well, the next day it rained again, Jim. It took 4 hours for the water to seep off the road so the cars can go through it safely. So nobody's coming up to do anything about this problem. So can you make another contact and see if somebody can go out here with a vacuum truck and suck them out?
I certainly can, Martin, because when I called, it was early afternoon, and I wasn't aware that Mr. Bolin works half days there, and then he has other employment with the Bolin Paving Company. But his secretary that answers the phone said she would pass this on to him. I assumed she would. She's a kind of a quality person, but I don't know where the problem is. But I will call him, and I will call him in the morning tomorrow. Okay.
One thing you want to bring to Bruce's attention that there's people watching for somebody to come out to investigate or clean it. They're keeping them informed. Well,
you know, in some cases we're getting pretty good service. Like you and I talked to F&V about that pavement kind of caving in by the triangle in front of, and I've mentioned this before, that triangle in front of Burger King, and they took care of that right away. So sometimes you know, holler about something, and but that fix was done by the state, not
that's MDOT, not county.
Yes, right, correct. So, but I will call tomorrow again, and I will demand to talk to him. So
I'll keep you abreast what's going on.
Okay, all right.
Thanks.
Yep.
For the board members, Art Cruz has been able to get on via computer. Do you guys want to go ahead and allow public comment?
Sure.
I'm good with it.
Yes, that's fine.
I'm okay.
Yeah, I'm good with it.
Oh.
Okay, I'm no longer seeing him online again.
Isn't this fun?
Here. I do have another computer labeled Art Cruz. See if that'll work. There we go.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Finally, sorry about that, guys. I'm not sure what was going on with the phone. Real quick about Lakewood Shores. I think a lot of confusion that I think a lot of us are having with the letter is how we came up with the rate of $12.33 for a 1-inch line. With that being a residential area, most of the rates are usually 3/4-inch lines, which will put our rates down to $7. The other issue that I'm seeing that we're looking at is, how did you determine our backyards and our driveways would be required to have a curb stop fee? We're really concerned with understanding how that works. I have 2 homes over there, and one of the lots is a driveway that leads up to the home, And then my son's backyard is on another lot in which he's being charged $12.33 for. The other thing that I'm concerned with is the water loss. Is Oscoda Township experiencing a huge amount of water loss? And is these fees being part of wanting to not only do the maintenance on the water lines, but to look and find and correct our loss of water that's occurring? I know these lines were put in 60 years ago by a Mr. Brown, I believe, and he paid for all the tap fees for it. And I think we just need a better explanation of what's going on, what you want to do. I believe that the fees are outrageous for a 1-inch line when that's commercial. We're paying commercial rates for a 1-inch line. I believe that the Henley Act is true, that if you look at Bolt versus East Lansing, that these ready to serve fees are being dismissed across several townships because of it being a tax. The other thing I want to recommend is I'm glad to see that the board took a look at that IT RFP from IT Right. I believe that if you look in your own backyard, you might find a company that is pretty intelligent with their IT infrastructure and how to put things like that together. I actually will take a look at the RFP when it comes out and be able to make some determination if CruiseCom can actually bid on it. I run a 400-seat call center, and when I hear $150 rates for an IT person to come out and do networking when it should be about $45 or $35, even if they're local, is something that really needs to be looked at. So good job on turning that down right away. I look forward to seeing that RFP, and I hope everyone has a good night. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, back to the board comment. Anybody else have anything?
Yeah, Jim here. I think the public knows that Aaron and I don't often agree on things, but I would like to say kudos to Aaron on the bike path. I took a ride out there recently, and it was complete yet, but going out to the schools, and I think it's a valuable addition to our town. And Aaron, with the assistance of Dave, is the moving force behind that whole thing as far as generating grants and so forth. So I say good job.
Well, thank you for that.
Thanks.
That was a group effort from Oscoda Township, Plainfield Township, and Oscoda Township.
Mm-hmm. I urge the listeners to this meeting, if they haven't, take a ride out River Road and see what I'm talking about.
Anybody else have anything?
Yeah, this is Bill. I just have a quick comment here. Last Tuesday, I was fortunate enough to go to the Veterans Memorial Park, where they were installing a new columbarium, and then had a minister there to consecrate that columbarium on that facility. And for anybody that's listening to this, if you haven't been out to the Veterans Memorial Park recently, I would suggest you take just a drive by there to take a look. They are in constant work making improvements of that and upgrades, and they have a lot of plans for the future of things they're going to be doing. Most of that is driven by Rosemary Netwig, and of course she certainly wouldn't take the credit. She has a lot of people helping her, but I think she's the driving force behind a lot of that. When the columbarium was there, Coletta donated their crane to come out and lift this about 8,000 pound piece of marble onto the the deck there of the Memorial Park, and then they had just a brief service. It was they're doing a lot of really nice things out there at that Memorial Park. So I would just encourage people, if you get a chance, it's right there along F41 near the entrance to the old base, to take a look and see what's going on there. There's been a lot of improvements to that, and I was very impressed. And I think that's probably something we, as a township, we probably need to look at in the future for our own cemetery. Is this idea of a columbarium there? A lot of people are going to that, and I think that's something that our cemetery committee probably needs to take up here in the not too distant future. So, and just one other comment in terms of the ready to serve fees. I think we need to take a look at those fees. I think we need to have a discussion about that in the future before we move forward with that. I think those need to be lowered, and I think that's a discussion this board has to have in the near future. So, thank you.
Anybody else have comments? Ms. McGuire, your office used to do utility billing. Can you talk about ready to serve?
As far as how long we've been doing it, or the description of what it is?
Whatever information you have for it that can help the public.
Actually, I was just looking through the Ready to Serve book, and it goes back to, I think I just pulled out the description for the Ready to Serve from 1958, actually, and it describes it. I also did on my listserv, I put out a thing to other treasurers, and if they were charging the Ready to Serve charge on just the curb stop, and nobody that responded said that they were. Everybody said that they had meters. But I do see in the old ordinances where the description or the definitions that actually looks in a couple different places that it may have changed, but I have one dating back to 1958 that has the description there. But I agree with Bill, I think that is a discussion that we need to have.
Anybody have anything else? One point that I'll give information on is regarding about ready to serve for general revenue, and that is not the case. All funds generated for the water service goes back into the water fund for use in the water system. So that's all I have. If nobody has anything else, then I need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
We are adjourned. Thanks everybody for joining.
Thank you.